Hello, my name is Sean Castile. I'm an extension soybean agronomist at Purdue University. Today we're going to be talking about assessing freeze damage of soybeans. A big part of this is determining what growth stage the soybeans were at the freeze event. So as we think about that, we're going from it was just planted to germinated to it's emerged, and then assessing the damage that comes out of that. As we look at that assessment, we also need to look at the opportunities for recovery, and then do we need to make any replant decisions. So as we start off on the first side of this, the seed that was just put in the ground. If the seed was just put in the ground within 24, 48 hours of the freeze event, so I'm talking air temperatures 32 degrees or below, a hard freeze of 28 is a number that we often use with soybeans. We want to look at that field probably in 2 to 3 weeks. And really what we're talking about on those fields is the temperature of the water that was being taken up by the seed as it's germinating. So that's going to be something that's going to be about 2 to 3 weeks out as we assess those fields. Now if we go within 5, 7 days or a couple weeks before the freeze event, again air temperature, and the seed has germinated but not emerged, that's again another wait and see. We can dig some of those up, but in most cases those are going to be fine. We're not going to have any major issues. It's whenever we start to get into the point of the beans are cracking and emerging. And so that's really what we want to talk about today. So as we look at soybeans that have germinated and starting that emergence process, cracking is what we're talking about. So when the hypocotyl comes out of the ground and it's just breaking the soil surface, that is what is exposed to that 28-degree freeze that we're really worried about. And if that's a couple hours or up to 6 to 8 hours like we had last week, that's going to be a point of concern. So as we look at those fields, we want to look at the hypocotyl and see if it's still got if it's spongy and mushy, that's going down, it's dead. If it's still got a little give back to it, that's going to be just fine. And as we're assessing these fields, we need to assess them within about 5 to 7 days. The first 3 to 4 days, it's still just kind of determining how much damage there really will be. If it's a field that was cracking, that's probably more like a 7 to 10 day assessment of whether those hypocotyls are really going to turn south on you or not. As we look at the field that we're in today, this field was planted about 5 to 6 weeks ago. And so the soybeans at the point of the freeze were already emerged. They were a VC to VE, so just emerged with the cotyledons coming out to the unifoliates. So let's kind of take a look at this. So as we look at those that have emerged, and so we've talked about cracking, now we're getting into, we've got VE, so that's when the cotyledons are coming up, and the growing point. That's a big part of soybeans. The growing point is above the soil surface at this point, and so that is a major concern if we burn that out. So we look at this line, we've got a number of these that were VE. You can already see that they're brown and dead. This event happened, 5 to 6 days ago, if you even dig it up. So down below, still, healthy-ish, right? But the growing point is up at the top. It's already been burned off. The unifoliates as well as the cotyledons. So this one was on that early emergence and got froze completely through. And then as we work down the line, we've got another one that the cotyledons, unifoliates are fully burned off. And now we get into where we start to have some of the cotyledons that are still green, but the growing point is right in there, right where the unifoliates were. That's burned off. This is going to be kind of that iffy plant of whether it's going to recover or not. So you pull it up, take it back. Hypocotyl has plenty of give back, so that's not dead. Growing point's gone. And this is, cotyledons are browning. It's sunken right underneath there. This plant will continue to die. Now, you just go down the line, still solid. This will split stem. The reason plants do that is growing point's now taken out and we have the axillary buds. And so they're going to come off of each one of those positions of the cotyledons. As we go one more, this is a great example that it was just cracking. That happened after the event. And so when we talk about the soybeans that have germinated but not emerged, you've got that soil buffering it. It's insulating it, and so you're not having that kind of damage. And again, this is a case where there should be no issues with a freeze event on that. And again, that's just starting to crack, and VE, no issues with the growing point. So now we're going to assess which ones are more that iffy. So we have one looking just at color. None of these really cause an issue to me. That guy looks good. This one's kind of that yellowing and feels a little spongy. And again, same kind of thing as you go down. I'd probably say there's 2 to 3 that are iffy on this line. The rest of them are either going to split stem, like these. And so that's putting us on the order of, we said, what, 2 to 3 iffy. We're going to have a stand of 80 to 90,000 on this one area. That's more than enough. No issues in terms of needing to replant. As we go across the field, we want to assess multiple areas, and then again, be strategic in this too. Low-lying areas tends to take a little longer to warm up, so wet conditions, and so those are probably be more apt to have more freeze damage. You think areas that have more residue. This field has decent soil exposure. The residue is worked in, so it had a little more radiant heating the day before the freeze, so we've got a little buffering capacity versus a no-till or a heavy residue situation. And then like field edges, that comes into play as well. Those are going to be ones that probably typically have more freeze damage and might need a little more spot planting. So as we talked about looking at the field and assessing it across the board, field edges are another one. This one's on the western side, so maybe you can get hit a little bit more if it had the western front. As we go across, looking down, I'm trying to row it. I can see it up close that all these rows are dead, burnt, no plants alive, still nothing. And we start to get into a case where we're in that transition where we have some good, bad, and uglies, get to more green plants, and then ones that are rows that have no issues whatsoever. We got cotyledons and unifoliates fully expanded. So this is probably just in 10-15 feet, but you know, it's something that we need to consider. Those plants are dead and need to have a little bit of replant on those.